Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, finally arrives on Switch, and it has been very anticipated. The work of Bethesda and Panic Button. Will this be a must-own Switch title, and is it an improvement over Panic Button and Bethesda's last effort with Doom? What's going on, everybody? It's Zach from Switch Force. Gabe is here, and we've been playing a whole lot of Wolfie 2, and I think right off the bat, it's safe to say this is a super good port.
Panic Button continues to outdo themselves with every major port they do. I don't know how they're doing this. This is like super impressive. I didn't play Wolfenstein 2 on the other platforms because it got announced for Switch, and I kind of wanted to wait and experience it on here for the first time, and I am very happy that I did so. I'm having a really good time with it so far, Zach.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a wait, so just to kind of recap, it obviously is a first-person shooter in a Nazi whirlwind world. The campaign is about 11 hours. It got an 87 back on PlayStation 4 on Metacritic, so a very well-regarded and highly rated shooter. I think that is one piece of the puzzle, but the other piece is how does this game perform on Switch, how does it play on Switch, and how does it fit in with the rest of the Switch library, and that's kind of where I want to focus and start off.
Yeah, well, we do have an entire video talking about the performance of the game, and you can go check that out on the channel now. But yeah, I'm really happy with it. You know, the gyro controls is something that stands out to me as something that Panic Button has like excelled at recently. They added them to Doom with a downloadable like update, but they are in the game here from the very beginning, and I don't want to play Wolfenstein 2 without the gyro, because it does make the experience that much better in my opinion. I have split my time between handheld and docked, using gyro in both manners with the Pro controller while docked. Handheld, I'm just playing with the Joy-Con on the actual Switch itself, and it's a notable improvement.
Yes, I've played some of both, mostly docked, and I think we differ in our opinion of the preferred method of play, which we'll touch on in a second here. But with Doom, it was a bit hard. Remember, these games are natively 60 frames per second, and they are 30 frames per second on Switch. So inherently, there is a little bit of a disconnect in terms of the aiming. Now, both of us, I think, agree that they have found ways to improve upon that here in comparison to Doom, because Doom was very much, it became like you kind of had to move with your body more than move the sticks. And even though it feels a bit like that, one, you know, like you mentioned, Gabe, having gyro default from the get-go is really helpful, and it just feels like they've optimized things a little bit better here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that Wolfenstein is a slow game, because it's not. But I feel like the fact that the enemies in Doom move way quicker than the enemies in Wolfenstein,
that definitely plays a part.
Yeah, like I definitely feel like I don't find myself aiming my character with the left stick as opposed to the right stick the way you're supposed to in this game as often as I did in Doom. So that was just automatically a huge checkmark for Wolfenstein being a better experience for me, at least.
Right, so whether that's Panic Button or just the nature of the game, probably a little bit of both. But I really liked playing on the Pro controller and using the gyro more as a fine-tuning mechanic versus a straight-up, like, all gyro aiming. So basically, the Pro controller sticks are good enough that you can aim, I'd say 90% of the way, but I was finding myself just like a little bit off. So I turned on gyro, and I really like that as a way to go for headshots, as a way to mostly track enemies as they moved. And as you mentioned, they are slower than in Doom, so that definitely helps make this feel like a better experience. I always feel a little bit goofy like turning on motion controls, because it mentally takes me back to like the pointer era, but this is obviously different being gyro. We love it in Splatoon, and here it works really well. In fact, like, I kind of liked it better just because it's a slightly more involved experience than when I played Wolfenstein 2 straight up on the DualShock 4.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all.
Yeah, it looks really good as well. We've done a little bit of comparison work thus far, and it's not going to be, you know, exactly the same, right? Like, you can definitely tell when you're looking at raw PS4 footage, or even PS4 Pro especially, versus Switch, it doesn't look as good. Gabe, I know you've been playing more handheld, and you prefer that for one, because it does, you know, make the game look better on the smaller screen.
Yeah, I mean, the resolution is going to be lower on the Switch screen than it is on dock. That's probably a given. But the fact that the screen is so much smaller, right? The amount of pixels per inch, I'm assuming, has a large portion to play there. And since you're not paying as much attention to like the like granular details in the background just because you're so focused in on that smaller screen. It does like look better, even though it's probably not running at a better resolution at all. I do find myself enjoying that a little bit. The subtitles were like a tiny bit hard to read sometimes, but you know that's just a sad reality of what the Switch is sometimes. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the handheld experience. Once we're like done with like the video stuff, I don't know if I want to play this game docked. I much rather play it in a handheld,
which I find fascinating. I think the game looks pretty darn great when it's in motion, when you're playing. To me, there are like 3 different aspects, and it looks varying degrees different in comparison to the other console version. So there's the straight-up cutscenes, which I think actually look pretty good. Like when it's the full-on, like, stop all the action cutscenes, you have no control. I think those look really good. And when I was recording, like, direct feed footage, they're not as detailed, but they're pretty close. Like, I was impressed.
Well, I was going to touch on the touchscreen super quickly. It's the aspect ratio. They don't use the full screen of the Switch. Like, again, handheld mode is what I'm talking about. Even dock, they don't. They do like have the black bars on top and bottom for the cutscenes. They quote unquote make it more cinematic, but it also helps that there's less area of the screen to fill up.
Right, and that's how the cutscenes were on on any other version. So I guess it's sort of an equalizer per se. The game in motion gameplay, like, it's hard for me. Side by side, you can tell, okay, wow, the lighting on that grenade throw looked a lot better, or okay, some of the god rays coming in on the boat look better on PS4. But if you're not playing side by side, I think it looks plenty good. In fact, I'd say it looks better than Doom looked, at least just from like my eye test. Where I think it looks a little bit rough is in sort of those not like full on cutscenes, but where like there's characters interacting and you have control of the camera. That was where I noticed the most like fuzziness and the most like, okay, this doesn't look anywhere near as good as my PS4 Pro.
Which would make sense, right? Because like characters like moving their mouths and like all the animation that goes behind that, excuse me, that's probably a little bit harder to make look good. If you have some enemies like in the background, like you're not like super zoomed into them, so you're not seeing like the intricacies of like their mouth and things like that. So when you are getting those quasi cutscenes that you're talking about, I feel like more detail is needed. So I think that's why those don't look as good.
Yes, but is it safe to say that this game, like, there's no point where I was like, oh my god, it's, I guess outside of that one scene early on, like I mentioned, it looks good. Like, you're playing it, and the visuals are never a detractor from the experience, at least for me. With gameplay, I'm shooting, I'm moving, and it's not anything that's like, oh gosh, like, I wish I was playing this on PS4.
Oh, I 100% agree with you. I was worried about that, if I'm being honest. I thought that, hey, I was going to be thinking to myself the entire time, like, hey, why aren't you playing this on PC? It's, way cheaper over there right now, and it's a better experience. You can even play in, like, 1440p. When actually playing, like, that stuff which is out the window for me.
Yeah, and if you go back and look, which I did a little bit of research, this game was not the crispiest on like Xbox One and PS4. It looked very good when I played it on PS4 Pro, but if you go back and compare like the Switch footage to just like the regular Xbox One footage, some of those issues I mentioned with like the fuzzy faces, they creep up on the Xbox One version. So this isn't maybe as far off as you might expect it to be. I'm not saying it's like, wow, it's pixel for pixel the same, but it looks good. Now, where we differ a little bit is I found the handheld very distracting to play, and that's because I don't like using the Joy-Con sticks for first-person shooting. Specifically that right stick, it's very hard for me to aim with that on the Joy-Con handheld mode. I have to rely on Gyro, and then Gyro is no longer just a fine-tuned mechanic. Gyro is the whole mechanic, and then I'm tilting and moving my Switch, and to me that was just an uncomfortable and nowhere near as fun way to play.
Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate that, but I didn't feel that way at all. Maybe I'm using Gyro way more, or maybe I'm just a little bit more used to Gyro because I play Splatoon more than you do. I don't know what it is.
Do you play Splatoon handheld a lot?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, I play Splatoon almost exclusively Pro Controller, so that probably definitely, plays into just our experience with the two. But don't you find a little bit like tilting the screen and like that's what just bothers me? Is like, okay, if I could set up the Switch and then use the Joy-Con, maybe it wouldn't be an issue, but strictly like holding the whole console, I'm like, I don't like that I'm like moving the screen as I'm trying to aim.
Yeah, and again, I can see how that would be a problem, but like I honestly, for me, it just wasn't an issue that I encountered. Like, I never felt uncomfortable playing in that way. Maybe it's just me being weird or something. I mean, I don't know. It could be that as well.
Yeah, so for me, I would say like this is a docked experience. Gabe feels has no issue with taking it with him on the go, which is really cool. We mentioned that the graphics look, just to the naked eye, a little bit better handled because of the smaller screen and whatnot, even if the resolution is dropped. I think it's safe to say like this is Panic Button, again, like you said, showing their chops and improving, because to me this is a better port than Doom.
Well, yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. And we're not going to get into a lot of what Wolfenstein 2 is, just because the game's been out for a while and you guys probably know what it is. But just the game itself is something I wanted to touch on, right? You claimed the Metacritic, right? You said 87 for the PS4 version. It's a quality product regardless. It is, like, more mature. Like, there are, like, some, like, super hardcore stuff that happened, like, right at the beginning of the game. But, as far as shooters on Nintendo Switch go, this is 100% up there. And, during E3, Youngblood's got announced, right? Which is like a continuation / expansion / new game. I mean, having that be day and date with Switch, if it happens, right? Because we saw the listing that has since been taken down. If they can somehow manage to get that day and date, I think that's such a huge win for Nintendo Switch.
Oh, absolutely. It would be fantastic, frankly, to get any of this third-party stuff day and date. But if they are able to develop a quicker pipeline for these bigger titles, that would be super awesome. In terms of how this relates to the rest of the Switch lineup, I think that's always something that people want to know and always something that's important. Obviously, dramatically different than anything first party, right? Like, this is no Kirby and this is no Mario Tennis Aces. But do you think it's the best shooter on Switch? Do you think it jumps a lot of ladder rungs because of that? And would it be something that you'd recommend to a new Switch owner?
Well, it gets a little tricky, right? Because there's not a lot of shooters on Switch, and the ones that are there are so different from what this is. Like, Splatoon's technically a shooter. I'm not gonna dare compare Splatoon to this. Doom is the only thing that gets close, and I much prefer Wolfenstein over Doom, even though Doom itself is a fantastic game in its own right. I just feel like the polish of the port here is just like a little bit better. It seems like they used Doom as a learning experience to see how they could get these games on the platform to begin with, and then since then they've improved quite a bit, it seems like, especially just like, again, having Gyro right off the bat instead of having to wait for an update the way we did with Doom. Great package right out of the box. I wish it wasn't, the price, right? Like, that's something that a lot of people kind of have issue with when it comes to these releases on Switch. Crash came out, and that's $50, and that's great, or $40, excuse me. But this is a full price game. So how do you feel about that being a thing?
Again, it's just like such a tricky thing that I don't know if we ever escape in terms of, hey, they Panic Button put plenty of work into this. And yeah, it's down to $20 on most of their consoles, but 30. It's 30. Yeah, it launched at 60, so they kind of want to keep that tried and true. I mean, let's be fair. Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy cost $40 when it launched on PlayStation 4, so it is there's parity there. It may not seem like it because it's cheaper than most of the Switch titles, but it's not like they decided to give you like a Switch discount because it is late. Like, it's $40 on Xbox One, it's $40 on PC, it's $40 on Switch. Wolfenstein 2 is deserving of the $60 price point. I think when you compare it to Doom, you're like, okay, Doom has multiplayer. It's a very different game. I think I like Wolfenstein 2 better. The story is very intense, but also very well done. The dialogue is pretty on point, and there's some crazy moments that happen. As we mentioned, it's a very mature title, so it's probably not for a lot of people, but if that is your kind of thing, I think this is one of the better Switch games. I really do. I mean, it's difficult to compare to like you said, Splatoon or Mario Odyssey or ARMS, or like, how do you match those up? But it is something that I would point to as maybe the tentpole port. I don't know. Like, obviously, I think a lot of people love Skyrim. That's a much older game. On the indie side, there are plenty of really good additions, but in terms of like AAA third-party ports, this might be my favorite.
Yeah, Skyrim is such an impressive port as well, just because that's like big open world type thing, and this isn't that. So at the very least, I kind of want to give brownie points to Skyrim, but yeah, they did an outstanding job with this, and like I said, it feels way better than Doom in my opinion. So if you were happy with that, you're going to be happy with this. People got their hands on Wolfenstein a little bit early, and even like the positive reaction on Reddit is something that people are just so happy with the way that this turned out.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's any glaring omissions or glaring bugs or glaring issues that are giving people, huge pause or anything of that sort. It makes you wonder, like, what else is possible on Switch, and what is being stopped because of just lack of interest versus lack of power versus, Wolfenstein 2 at its core is a corridor shooter, so, take that into account. But it looks really good, and it makes me optimistic and hopeful that it might be a fool's errand, but maybe one day we start getting more and more third-party ports, because Panic Button seems to know what's up, and if they could lend their skills, or if other studios can figure it out, we could have a lot more fun on this hybrid.
Yeah, for sure.
So Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus definitely gets big recommendations from both of us. I think it is totally worth it. I think you're going to be very happy with the Switch port. I prefer docked, Gabe prefers handheld, but it can be enjoyed both ways. That gyro aiming feels almost necessary, but it's handled in such a way that in some cases enhances the experience and makes it more fun. And I think for certain players, they'll find this to be a really cool way to play Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. As I mentioned, the game is very well regarded, so scoring it is a bit difficult. I don't know if you drop it because it doesn't look as good. I don't know if you raise it because it's impressive. I would be very happy to say that this is an easy 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I find myself agreeing with that. I could probably land right around the 8 mark as well. Just a little bit of growing pains with the Switch, but hey, at least Panic Button, I was going to say developers, at the very least Panic Button seems to have a grasp for how to do things correctly. So 8 out of 10 is something that I feel comfortable with as well.
And it makes me very excited to see what Panic Button is announcing next, because they supposedly do have another major port in the works, and based on their trajectory, it's only going to get better from here. So let us know your take on Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus in the comments down below. Are you planning on picking it up? Are you sold based on the footage and the impressions you're hearing? Let us know. We're very curious. If you played it for ourselves, give us your mini review in the comments down below. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all the latest greatest from the Switch and more stellar titles like this one. Follow us on Twitter and Discord. There's links down there in the description. And for myself and Gabe, until next time, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Have a fantastic day. Switch Force out.